What happens when a morning interview spirals into television chaos? In just 34 seconds, a royal guest goes from composed to confrontational, turning a simple question into the most explosive moment Good Morning America has ever witnessed. This is the story of how one interview became the talk of the nation. The morning started like any other at the Good Morning America studios. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and Michael Strahan sat in his chair with that familiar, welcoming smile that millions of Americans wake up to every single day. He had conducted thousands of interviews over the years. He knew how to handle difficult guests, tricky questions, and unexpected moments. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. Across from him sat Meghan Markle, dressed impeccably as always. See, her posture perfect, her smile carefully practiced. The segment was supposed to be straightforward, a conversation about her latest charitable initiative, a few light questions about life after leaving royal duties, maybe a heartwarming story or two, standard morning television fare. Nothing controversial, nothing complicated, but from the very first question, something felt different. Michael leaned forward slightly, his voice warm and genuine as he began. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I know our viewers are excited to hear about your new foundation and the work you are doing. But before we get into that, I have to ask, because so many people are curious, how are you adjusting to life in California? What has that transition been like for you and your family? It was a softball question. The kind of gentle opener that any seasoned interviewer uses to ease a guest into the conversation. But the response was anything but warm. Meghan's smile tightened. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. Well, Michael, she said, her tone clipped. I think it is fascinating that you would start with that question. Not about the incredible work we are doing to help communities in need. Not about the positive change we are trying to create, but about my personal life, as if that is what matters most. The studio crew exchanged glances. Michael's smile never wavered, but you could see the slight surprise in his eyes. He had been doing this long enough to know how to pivot. Of course, and we will definitely get to that, he said smoothly. I just thought our audience would appreciate hearing about your journey first. But let us dive right into the foundation work. Tell us what you have been focusing on. Meghan shifted in her seat. You know, I find it really interesting how the media always wants to frame things in a certain way. You say journey, but what you really mean is drama. What you really want is for me to talk about palace secrets or family feuds or whatever tabloid narrative you are trying to push today. Michael blinked, clearly taken aback. I can assure you, that is not what I am trying to do at all, he said, his voice still calm and professional. I asked about your life in California because I genuinely thought you might want to share something positive about that experience. But if you would prefer to focus solely on your work, that is absolutely fine. Let us talk about the foundation. But Meghan was not ready to move on. You see, this is exactly the problem, she continued, her voice rising slightly. This is what I have been dealing with for years. People like you, with your platforms and your reach, pretending to be supportive while actually just looking for the next headline. Do you know how exhausting that is? Do you have any idea what it is like to be constantly scrutinized, constantly misrepresented? The atmosphere in the studio had completely changed. What was supposed to be a friendly morning chat was rapidly turning into something else entirely. Michael straightened in his chair, his expression serious, but still respectful. I understand that you have had difficult experiences with the media, he said carefully, and I think that is a conversation worth having. But I want to be very clear. I invited you here today in good faith. I prepared questions about your charitable work because that is what your team told us you wanted to discuss. I am not here to ambush you or create drama. Meghan let out a short, humorless laugh. Good faith? Is that what you call it? Let me tell you what good faith looks like, Michael. Good faith is not starting an interview by asking about my personal life when you know perfectly well that I came here to talk about helping people. Good faith is respecting boundaries. Good faith is understanding that I am not here to be your entertainment. The tension was palpable now. You could feel it through the television screen. Michael took a slow breath, clearly working to maintain his composure. With all due respect, he said, his voice steady, asking a guest how they are adjusting to a major life change is not entertainment. It is a normal, human question, but I apologize if it made you uncomfortable. Truly. So please, tell our viewers about the work you are doing. That is why you are here. Instead of answering, Meghan looked directly into the camera. I want everyone watching to understand something, she said, ignoring Michael completely. This is what happens when you try to use your voice for good. This is what happens when you try to make a difference. People in positions of power, people like the host sitting across from me right now, they try to diminish you. They try to make it about anything other than the actual work. Michael's jaw tightened. For the first time, you could see real frustration flash across his face. Hold on, he said, his voice firmer now. I need to stop you right there. I have been nothing but respectful to you from the moment you walked in here. I welcomed you onto this show. I gave you a platform to talk about your foundation. And now you are sitting here on national television accusing me of trying to diminish you? That is not fair. And frankly, it is not true. Meghan turned back to face him, her expression cold. Fair? You want to talk to me about fair? Do you know what is not fair, Michael? Having everything you say twisted and turned into something ugly. Having people question your motives at every turn. Having to justify your existence over and over again. That is what is not fair. I understand that you have been through a lot, Michael said, clearly trying to steer the conversation back to calmer waters. And I genuinely sympathize with that. But you are talking to me as if I am responsible for all of those experiences. And I am not. I am just a host trying to have a conversation with you. That is all this is. Just a host, Meghan repeated, shaking her head. Just a host with millions of viewers. Just a host with the power to shape narratives. Just a host who chose to start this interview by focusing on my personal life instead of my purpose. Do not pretend you do not understand how this works. Michael rubbed his forehead, a gesture of someone reaching the end of their patience. Okay, he said slowly. Let me ask you this. What would you like to talk about? Because I have tried multiple times now to give you the floor to discuss your foundation, and instead, you keep circling back to attack me. So please, tell me what you want from this interview. What I want, Meghan said, her voice sharp, is to be treated with the respect I deserve. What I want is for people in your position to think before they speak. What I want is for the media to stop acting like they are entitled to every piece of my life. And I have been respectful, Michael shot back, his own frustration finally breaking through. From the very beginning of this interview, I have been nothing but respectful. But respect goes both ways. You do not get to come onto my show and make accusations about me trying to diminish you when all I did was ask how you were doing. That is not okay. The moment hung in the air like a thunderclap. The crew behind the cameras were frozen, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut to commercial. This had gone so far beyond a normal interview that no one quite knew what to do. Meghan stood up abruptly, her microphone nearly falling off her lapel. You know what, Michael? I do not have to sit here and take this. Michael looked up at her, genuinely confused now. Take what? I am trying to have a conversation with you. That is literally all I have been trying to do. This, she gestured broadly at him, at the cameras, at the entire set. This whole setup. This performance. You sitting there acting like you are the good guy, when really you are just another person trying to tear me down. Michael stood up too, his hands raised in a calming gesture. Meghan, please sit down. Let us take a breath and start over. Clearly, there has been some kind of miscommunication here. There is no miscommunication, she snapped. I understand perfectly clearly what is happening here, and I am done with it. I am done with people like you, thinking you can treat me however you want just because I agreed to come on your show. People like me, Michael repeated, his voice rising for the first time. What exactly does that mean? Because I have been nothing but professional. I welcomed you here. I asked you normal questions, and you have spent this entire time accusing me of things I have not done. Meghan reached down and unclipped her microphone, yanking it free from her jacket. I do not owe you an explanation. I do not owe you my time, and I certainly do not owe you the opportunity to make yourself look good at my expense. The producers in the control room were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, but the moment was unfolding so quickly that they barely had time to react. Michael shook his head in disbelief. This is unbelievable. I have interviewed thousands of people. Thousands. And I have never had someone react like this to basic questions. You are acting like I attacked you when all I did was try to have a normal conversation. Normal? Meghan's voice was incredulous. There is nothing normal about this. There is nothing normal about the way the media treats me. And clearly, you are part of that problem. No, Michael said firmly, his voice cutting through her words. I am not part of any problem. I am a host who invited you onto his show in good faith, and you have turned this into something it never needed to be. If you want to leave, that is your choice. But do not stand here and accuse me of being someone I am not. Meghan tossed her microphone onto the chair where she had been sitting. The sound echoed through the studio. You know what the saddest part is, Michael? You probably actually believe that. You probably think you are one of the good ones, but you are not. You are just like all the rest. And you, Michael said, his voice quiet but firm, are being incredibly unfair right now. She laughed bitterly. Unfair. There is that word again. Coming from someone who has no idea what it is actually like to be in my position. You are right, Michael acknowledged. I do not know what it is like to be you, but I do know what it is like to be disrespected. And that is exactly what you are doing to me right now. You came onto my show, you made assumptions about my intentions, and you have spent this entire interview attacking me for things I did not do. By now, a producer had rushed onto the set, trying to quietly intervene, but Meghan waved her away. Do not touch me, she said sharply to the producer before turning back to Michael. This is exactly why I should never have agreed to do this. I knew it was going to be a setup. A setup? Michael's voice was incredulous now. You think this was a setup? I asked you how you were adjusting to California. That was my big ambush. That was my master plan. Mock me all you want, Meghan said, grabbing her bag from beside the chair. But I see through it. I see through all of it. Michael held his hands up. I am not mocking you. I am genuinely trying to understand what just happened here. Because from my perspective, I asked you a friendly question. You took offense, and now you are storming off the set, acting like I did something terrible to you. And I did not. I just did not. Keep telling yourself that, Meghan said as she started walking toward the exit. Keep telling yourself you are innocent in all of this. I am not claiming to be innocent, Michael called after her. I am claiming to be confused, because I genuinely do not understand what I did to upset you so much. She stopped at the edge of the set and turned back one last time. That is the problem, Michael. You do not even realize when you are being part of the problem, and that makes it even worse. Then explain it to me, he said, his voice almost pleading now. If I did something wrong, tell me what it was, because I genuinely want to understand. Meghan shook her head. I do not owe you that either. I do not owe you my emotional labor on top of everything else. The crew members were all staring now, completely frozen by what they were witnessing. This was not just an interview gone wrong. This was a complete meltdown happening live on one of the biggest morning shows in America. Michael ran his hand over his face, clearly exhausted. "This is insane," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "This is absolutely insane." "Call it whatever you want," Meghan said coldly. "I am leaving." "Clearly," Michael replied, his voice tight with controlled frustration. Meghan took one more step toward the exit, then paused. "You know what, Michael? I actually feel sorry for you." He looked up at her sharply. "You feel sorry for me?" "Yes," she said, "because you are so used to being the one in control, the one asking the questions, that you cannot even see when you are being harmful. You think because you smile and use a friendly tone that it makes everything okay, but it does not." Michael stood up straighter, his patience finally completely worn through. "You know what? I feel sorry for you too, because you are so convinced that everyone is out to get you that you cannot even accept a sincere conversation. You came here looking for a fight, and you manufactured one out of absolutely nothing." "How dare you?" Meghan hissed. "How dare I what?" Michael challenged. "How dare I defend myself? How dare I point out that you are being unreasonable? Because that is exactly what is happening here." The producer tried again to step in, but Michael held up a hand. "No, let her finish," he said. "Let her say whatever else she needs to say, so we can all move on with our lives." Meghan's face flushed with anger. "You think you are so much better than me, don't you? You think because you have this nice guy image that it makes you somehow superior." "I do not think I am better than anyone," Michael said firmly. "But I do think I have been professional today, and you have not. That is not about superiority. That is just a fact." "Professional," she spat the word like it was poison. "You want to talk about professional? A professional would not have started this interview the way you did. By asking how you were doing?" Michael's voice rose again. "That is what you are still hung up on? That one question?" "It is not about the question," Meghan shouted. "It is about what it represents. It is about the constant invasion, and the constant assumption that my life is public property." "Then why did you agree to come on a talk show?" Michael asked, his voice cutting through her outburst. "If you do not want to talk about your life, why did you agree to do an interview? That is literally what interviews are." The question hung in the air, unanswerable, because he was right, and somewhere deep down, even she had to know it. Meghan's jaw worked as she searched for a response. Finally, she said, "You do not get it. You will never get it." "You are right," Michael agreed. "I do not get it. I do not get how asking a friendly question turned into this. I do not get how trying to have a conversation became an attack. And honestly, at this point, I do not think I want to get it. Because from where I am standing, this is ridiculous." "Ridiculous," Meghan repeated slowly. "You think I am ridiculous?" "I think this situation is ridiculous," Michael clarified. "I think the fact that we are standing here yelling at each other over nothing is ridiculous. Yes?" Meghan looked around the studio, at all the crew members watching in stunned silence, at the cameras still rolling, capturing every moment of this disaster. "This is a mistake," she said finally. "Coming here was a mistake." "Maybe it was," Michael agreed quietly. "For both of us." She turned on her heel and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking sharply against the studio floor. Every person in the room watched her go, too shocked to move, too stunned to speak. Just before she reached the door, Michael called out one last time, "For what it is worth, I really did want to hear about your foundation work." Meghan stopped but did not turn around. "No, you did not," she said quietly, and then she was gone. Michael stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty doorway. Then he looked directly into the camera, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. "Well," he said to the millions of viewers watching at home, "that just happened." The control room finally cut to commercial, but the damage was done. The interview that was supposed to be about charitable work and positive change had instead become one of the most contentious moments in morning television history. As the crew scrambled to figure out what to do next, Michael sat back down in his chair and took a deep breath. He had handled difficult interviews before. He had dealt with angry guests, emotional guests, guests who disagreed with him. But this was something different entirely. This was a level of hostility that seemed to come out of nowhere, triggered by the simplest of questions. "Are you okay?" one of the producers asked him quietly. Michael nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I am okay. I really do not understand what happened there." "None of us do," the producer replied. In the green room, Meghan was gathering her things, her hands shaking slightly. Her publicist approached carefully. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I am fine," Meghan said sharply. "Let us just go." The publicist started, then stopped, clearly unsure how to finish the sentence. "Do not," Meghan warned. "Just do not." Back on set, the show was preparing to come back from commercial. Michael had composed himself, straightened his tie, and put his professional face back on. But everyone who was there that day would remember what they had witnessed. They would remember the tension, the anger, the complete breakdown of what should have been a simple morning interview. When the cameras came back on, Michael addressed the audience with the kind of grace that had made him beloved by millions. "We apologize for that," he said simply. "Sometimes interviews do not go as planned. We are going to move on now to our next segment." He did not make excuses. He did not throw blame. He did not try to explain or justify. He just acknowledged what had happened and moved forward. Because that was who he was. That was the kind of professional he had always been. The rest of the show went smoothly. Michael interviewed a chef about holiday recipes. He chatted with a local hero who had saved someone from a burning building. Then he laughed and joked and made his co-hosts smile. To anyone who tuned in late, it would have seemed like any other normal morning on Good Morning America. But for those who had seen it, for the millions who had watched the clash unfold in real time, it was anything but normal. It was a moment that would be replayed, discussed, analyzed, and debated for days, weeks, maybe even years to come. In 34 seconds, a simple question about adjusting to life in California had spiraled into a full-blown confrontation. In the span of one interview, a morning show segment had transformed into a cultural flashpoint. And through it all, Michael Strahan had remained calm, professional, and respectful, even as accusations flew and tempers flared. He had not asked for drama. He had not sought controversy. He had simply tried to do his job, to have a conversation, to give his guest a platform to share her work with millions of people. And when that guest had turned that opportunity into an attack, he had defended himself without losing his composure, without stooping to her level, without abandoning his principles. As Michael signed off at the end of the show, thanking viewers for watching and wishing them a great day, no one watching could have known exactly what was going through his mind. But if you looked closely, if you paid attention to the slight tightness around his eyes, the careful control in his smile, you could see it. The exhaustion, the bewilderment, the lingering question of what exactly had just happened. And as the cameras finally stopped rolling, as the crew began to pack up and the next segment prepared to begin, as life on the set of Good Morning America slowly returned to normal, one thing was crystal clear. This was a moment no one involved would ever forget. A reminder that live television is unpredictable, that human interactions are complex, and that sometimes, despite everyone's best intentions, things just go completely off the rails.